Hello, everybody. Welcome to next episode of Disruption Talks by Netguru. My name is Paula Sztainwald. I'm a product manager, and I'm having a pleasure of hosting today's episode. Before we start, I wanted just to wish everybody happy Valentine's Day. And with that nice intro, I wanted to also introduce our today's guest, my fellow product manager from fintech industry, Venkat.
Hey Paula, thanks for having me and a very happy Valentine's Day to your viewers.
Yeah, great. Thanks for being with us. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm pretty puffed and excited to be here and have a great conversation with you for the next hour or so.
Awesome, awesome. Me too. Okay, so let's jump into it. Venkat, maybe we can start with a little bit of introduction of yourself. Could you tell us a little bit of your previous background, the role that you've been hosting?
Sure, Paula, I work in product and I've got a background in fintech, specifically cards and payments. I've been in product for around about 6 years, and I have had the pleasure to work on products that are both in the startup as well as scale up environments. But the problem remains the same. How do we make the fintech industry better for our customers? As part of my product journey, I've had a chance to work within the card and payments industry, also a little bit into remittance as well as disbursements. So, yeah, all in all, a fintech uh, person. I would like to get called, I guess.
Sounds good. And, as you mentioned, as a fintech person, I wonder, do you recall even the first time when you, I don't know, got the in touch with fintech? I like what comes to my mind is, something that's super like popular for everybody, like payment cards. Do you remember even the first time that you used the payment card?
Interesting. Going back in time, I think I was 18 or maybe 19 when I received my first debit card. Just for your listeners, I was born and raised in India. And at that point in time, payment cards had not penetrated into the country so deeply. I think it was a blue card, which didn't look very different to the cards that we receive today, except for maybe a magnetic strip on the back.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't so much you could do with it, right? Other than withdrawing cash, because cash was still ruling the roost, and internet also had not penetrated so deeply within the demographics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you could basically withdraw cash, and you could sometimes go in stores and make payments, but it wasn't popular though.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't flashy. It didn't come in great packages like how you get cards today, and
Mm-hmm.
it clearly wasn't a status symbol. But wow, we've come such a long way now.
Yeah, exactly. I can imagine that it's very different from the experiences that you're having right now. So, what would you say is like the most common like payment option that you're using right now?
Might be a bit biased, but I do use my Monese card for my day-to-day transactions domestically within the UK,
Mm-hmm.
and also when I go overseas, I do travel quite a bit, both for pleasure and work.
Mm-hmm.
Domestically, it's easy for me to use my payment card. I don't use my physical card so much. It's on my Android device. I use my Google Wallet for transactions. And in the UK, you don't use, or I can't remember the last time I used card cash. Sorry. When I do travel, I still continue to use my Minis card because the plan I'm on allows me to not worry about FX charges. I use the card like I am a local in that country that I'm visiting, and I don't have any withdrawal limits or anything like that. So basically, a cheap alternative to converting money and using it on the go.
Yeah. If you think about it, right, it's not even so many years that it comes from like the first experience that you describe versus the one that you describe right now. And the topic of our today's talk is even looked further, like into the future. So let's get there in a second. But before jumping into the future, I also wanted to ask you something that I'm asking all the product managers I talk with, because I'm super curious how people end up in product roles, because this is not something that you know dream of when you're a child. So how did the journey look like for you?
You know what? If I was getting paid $1 for each time I get asked this question, I would be a millionaire today, right? The truth is, there's no direct way to get into product, but there are some ways that can get you close to product, right? Let's talk about that, and then let's talk about how I got into it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I mean, if you think about what a product role is, at the heart of what it does is solves customer pain points, keeping the company's strategic objectives in mind, right? There are a lot of other things that product manager does, but if there is a burning need to solve customer problems, regardless of the industry you're in, and you are in your current role some way able to demonstrate that you are a problem solver, I'm sure some of those doors automatically open. Or you could be a business analyst, or you could be even a software developer who is working on problem statements and who's constantly sizing problems. Uh, you could also take that also the opportunity for product manager opens up there. For me, though, it was slightly different. My background in cards and payments organically led to a product role within Visa a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
If you ask me if I knew what product was at that time, probably not. Neither the person who hired me to the role nor did I had a full understanding of what product meant. But like I said, there was a burning desire to solve problems, whether it was business problems or customer problems, that led to us as a team building out a great product called Visa Direct, which is for your viewers. I would strongly advise that you go and Google the product up. There's a lot of information. It's a pretty exciting product that we worked on. Yes. So, long story short, my background in fintech, specifically payments, got me an opportunity to get into the product side of things at Visa. From there on, it was fairly easy for me to make a career out of it because, yeah, that's how it is.
Yeah, I can relate with what you're saying. I think like once you get into product, then it's something that you learn that you love doing and you just want to stay there. And
Exactly. And it's more of a buzzword if you think about it, right? I mean, from 2013, 2014 onwards, this role has gotten a lot more traction, but this role is not necessarily new. It was just called differently. They used to call it technical program manager or business solutions or whatever. It had different names, but the concept always remained, and it's no longer a buzzword. It's a very strategic role. It's sits in the heart of what modern companies, especially in the software and services, do. And I think this role has a lot of and the future for this role is very bright.
yeah, I'm also thinking. So we are supposed to talk about the future of the fintech, but as like since you mentioned, I'm going to ask also for what do you think is the future for product manager role is going to look like?
The future is looking reasonably great because it's a role. It's a very strategic role. Whether you're in a startup or when you're in a startup, you've got to wear a slightly different hat, right? Your objectives are different. Maybe speed to market is what matters the most when you're building, especially a product from scratch. Uh, uh, the engineers are there, but you're going to have to work cross-functionally with different teams and with your customers, and you're going to let your software engineering teams know what needs to be built and in what timelines. And that's a very important role, right? Otherwise, prioritization becomes a problem. You might end up building a wrong product that solves a wrong problem, evaluating product market fits, and many other things, right? And as the SaaS businesses are diversifying, especially in fintech, as more and more companies coming to, and it's getting very competitive, and it's a very crowded market, but there is still space for companies to come and share the pie. This role is becoming extremely important, and it's very clear.
Yeah, totally agree. Um, so, could you share, like, looking at the last year, 2022, and looking 1 year ahead of us, like current year, 2023, what would you say was something that put the most mark on for you, like in the last year, and what do you think is going to be such a thing in the coming year?
So for me, 2022 was truly a very rewarding year, right? I mean, when you're in product, you build products and all that. That's fine. Some products take off, some products don't. But for me, I would frame that question slightly differently. More than talking about what I'm proud of, I would like to bring the focus on what I was satisfied about in 2022. I had tremendous opportunities to work closely with global high street banks to see the problems that they are facing today in order to scale up their products and meet the demands of their modern day customers. The needs and pain points and wants of modern day customers have changed and evolved thanks for the fintech and neobanks that have also led these revolutions, so to speak. I had the opportunity to work with these banks, for these banks, and be a part of the puzzle, to be able to pick up part of the puzzle and solve some of those pain points for them was truly rewarding. And I think uh, the as a service businesses have made a significant headwind in the last 1 2 years, and they're going to make a solid headwind in the years to come as well. So yeah, I had a chance to work with the banks, get into their shoes, and see how they are thinking through their customers and what levels of digital transformations that they will have to make in order to make it work for their modern customers, right? If they didn't do that, they are already facing a lot of competition with their challenger banks. They are going to lose a significant market share, so lose a lot of their customers to the modern day neobanks really. So that was truly enriching for me, and also I would say an eye opener, because up until that point it was all buzzwords. uh, but having been a part of the journey, I can appreciate why it's no longer a buzzword and more of a need, uh, rather than a buzzword. Tackling your other question was, what about 2023? How do I stay focused? What excites me in 2023, right? It's a bit of an extension of 2022, right? I would like to see these as a services business, whether it is banking as a services or whether it is embedded finance, getting into the other industries, or whether it is my core, which is cards, right? Let's not forget that I'm a cards professional, and the card systems are being built and offered as a service specifically to banks, because not just for new banks but even for existing banks, they're looking for transformation, and new banks are looking for partnership models to quickly open up their offerings to their customers. So I would really like to be a part of that transformation and see that journey, because there is a burning need to solve these problems, and there's no better time than now to actually focus and ensure that those works happen at a nice pace. I would also like to take a closer look at the B2B payments side of things. It remains largely undisrupted, and see how we can make it a little bit more efficient and potentially less cumbersome for some of the larger corporates that are moving large sums of money from point A to point B.
Okay, yeah, you mentioned a lot of like struggles on the market right now and what the future holds. I wonder what's in your opinion the technology or and trends that going to play the crucial role in that.
Sure. So From before actually getting into technology, let's make it clear, right? We are within the industry. We are seeing automation making significant progress, right? In fact, to just to give you an example, my wife was running an RPA evaluation program with the bank a few years ago, five years ago. She sat with some CXOs of the organization to assess what areas of the banking operations can be automated. And she came back with some statistics that at that time, almost 60% of the banking operations can be automated within X amount of time. So it's clear that automation is making significant process and speeding up all the manual operational areas within the banks, whether it is KYC or onboarding, whether it is processing loans or trade finance or maybe even customer services, right? If a lot of those areas can are already being automated, and I would imagine that a lot of those areas will be fully automated in the years to come, right? With that in mind, if we look at some specific technologies, I think all of us know this. Blockchain is making significant progress, specifically in the B2B space. I'm not so confident in telling that crypto will roost the roost because it still remains largely volatile and unregulated. But there is a need for decentralizing power from banks, institutions, and governments, and simply reducing the number of parties in a transaction value chain, right? Why do we need to have so many parties when you're sending money from A to B? I don't get it. And I think blockchain is solving for that problem. Um I also think data is the king. Especially within our industry, there's a need for processing and storing large amounts of data, whether it is customer data or whether it is payment data or transaction data. Uh, any company that is operating in this space today, there's no doubt, is dealing with a lot of data. And with having to deal with so much data, there's also a need for storing these data securely and safely. So I think big data and cloud computing is also going to make a significant stride within this industry and many other industries in the years to come. I would summarize that these 3 or 4 areas are going to see significant progress in the years to come. When I say the years to come, I'm talking about 2 to 4 years, because fintech is ever changing. No 2 years are the same. I would go on to say that no 2 years are even similar. So 2 to 4 years is a long time for things to happen within this space.
Yeah, especially fintech, right? That is changing so drastically. You mentioned a lot of areas. You mentioned also like optimization, internal optimization for the banks, but also digitalization. And I wonder, since the world is becoming more and more digitized with every day, basically, do you think that there will be even a need for physical card payments anymore in the nearest future?
You have asked a very important question, right? I keep getting asked this question because, especially being in the card space, and I've implemented virtual cards, digital cards, and also physical card journeys for customers. When you look at things from a European lens, it's kind of, you get to think that you don't need a card in your wallet anymore. You can have your wallet, you could have your wallet, you could have your payment card in your mobile device and basically crack on with life. But there's no data that suggests that physical card is losing its usage anywhere in the world, right? As long as there is dependence on cash, we need to understand that there are still many economies that are very dependent on cash. There are still many economies that don't accept mobile payments in their POS terminals. And there are still many geographies that, or even Europe, that doesn't always accept cash withdrawal using your mobile, or a contactless payment. That goes to show that as long as there's going to be dependence on cash, there is going to be dependence on physical card. And there are a lot of stakeholders that are invested in physical cards. There's a lot of co-branding going on. It's like I said, it's more of a psychologically having a physical card in your hand makes people feel good about having a card. That's why you see flashy cards, right? If you go on the underground in London, it's not uncommon to see Gen Zs and millennials flashing an orange card or flashing a blue card, not because they want to, because they're using that on a day-to-day basis for transacting, because that makes their lives easy. So I don't think physical cards are going anywhere, but I do think that the usage may probably drop, but no, I don't see it really going anywhere. No.
Got it. So I think maybe it's also the time for our biggest question of the talk today, the title. So what do you think the future looks like for digital payments?
What does the future? So you're asking me the evolution of digital payments in the future, right? Looking at some of the current trends, maybe. We can look at these trends from different verticals, right? I think ultimately what will drive these trends are customers' psychology, customers' choice, the regulatory landscape, and technology, right? All of these three things needs to coexist and needs to work in tandem, and that will significantly decide how customers choose to pay and where they choose to pay, etc., etc. A good example for this is embedded finance, right? Let's define what embedded finance is for people from other industries. Embedded finance is basically an option to remove any of the buying decision points from the users. All of the payment or decisions of buying something happens in the background in a very seamless way, right? Physically accessing and parting with cash to kind of complete a transaction is discouraging to users, right? When you have to pay someone or pay for goods and services using a cash, or if it's not seamless, there's a lot of decision points when it comes to payment before buying something that would discourage a user from potentially converting that to a purchase, right? So embedded finance is basically ensuring that people are not actually aware from a payment perspective as to what they are doing towards purchase of goods and services, right? With that definition in mind, I think embedded finance has already made its way into our lives. Seamless payments experience in non-financial industry has grown so much that in today's world, you can't have an e-commerce business. You can't have any business that takes payments which has friction in it. So yeah, if you look at automotives and health tech, I think embedded finance is making significant progress in those two industries. I'm sure there are other industries as well, but those two industries are specifically something that caught my attention when I was reading about embedded finance a couple of months ago. There's going to also be more reliance on digital wallets and digital banking apps on a day-to-day basis for younger customer segments. Really, let's differentiate what wallet versus a digital banking app is. Right, a digital wallet is something like an Apple Pay or a Google Pay or a Samsung Pay that has acceptance across payment terminals, whether it is e-commerce or whether it is in shopping experience, or whether you're simply checking out in your metro or underground stations. That's how the industry technically defines a digital wallet with larger acceptance. And the digital banking apps are the modern day neobanks and digital bank apps. The super apps that we see are the digital banking apps. So there's going to be a lot of uptick in the usage of the digital wallets and digital banks, not only in the western part of the world, but I also do think in the eastern part of the world, where there are other forms of payments that have taken uh, uh, significant that has displaced cash, really. Like if you look at Asia Pacific, it's largely a QR code driven market. Any payment, regardless of the size of the denomination, payment happens in using a QR code, and that's increasingly going to be digitized in the years to come. I also think consumers are becoming a lot more educated these days, and they prefer sustainable ways of making payments and reducing the carbon footprint that they are leaving in this planet. So I'm also within the industry seeing an uplift in the eco-friendly options like green cards and sustainable recyclable plastics and things like that. It's slightly expensive to offer those solutions these days, but I think there's a clear need in the industry for the right reasons, and I'm sure those areas of those areas are also being looked at by players within the industry, and we are going to see a lot of such solutions being rolled out in the years to come. Lastly, I think B2B payments. I keep touching upon B2B payments on different topics, but it needs to, it's becoming a bit digital, but it needs to get fully digitized. Whether it means making electronic payments, or small businesses or large businesses issuing electronic invoicing, I think we were going to see a race in that side of things as well. Yeah, I think the world is becoming super digitized, and almost every area of the business within the fintech is getting more and more digitized. Yeah.
Venkat, like usually the future is fuzzy and you don't know what's going to be, but after your answer, I feel like very certain what the future is going to look like. So very insightful stuff that you shared. Thank you for that.
Sure. See, these are the thing is these are none of these things are net new, right?
Mm,
All of these things are already there in the industry, right? People in the industry are seeing it. Some people are seeing it more easily than the others.
mm,
But it's interesting for people who are not in the industry to also kind of understand that payment experience is almost at the heart of anything that is being designed today, regardless of the industry. Uh, whether it is education technology, or whether it is automotives or health tech, designing a payment experience in a way that customers don't have to sit down and think about their whole payment journey is already happening. It's just that it is going to happen at a different scale, uh, even in the foreseeable future.
yeah. You're saying that all of those, like the future is already here.
Future is
It,
already here. We just have to embrace it and see how best we can adapt, really.
yeah. I have a question from one of our listeners, Mary. So let me just read it out loud. So Mary is asking, economies that are currently developing as fast as e.g. India have an opportunity to make a digital leap faster and smarter than some established global players. Which financial innovation drives change the most in such rapidly changing environments?
I think it's a good question. I think if I understood the question right, your viewer wants Mary wants to know what is driving technological innovations in emerging economies versus the more established economies, right? Like I said, it's not always technology that drives innovation. Sure, technology drives innovation, but ultimately, if you're solving a customer pain point, your innovation multiplies hundredfolds, right? In an economy like India, there's a population, a significant population, more than a billion people, and data shows that much of the population in India is young. So, uh, and also a significant percentage of businesses are in informal setup, and a large percentage of population are still in rural India, right? How do you bring all of these people into your mainstream economy, right? The best way to do that is to get them to open up bank accounts, get them to manage their funds easily, educate them on finances, and get them to allow to take payments and pay people also easily. So fintech has done exactly that. It's solved for people's pain point. And today you can actually even you could buy almost anything of a small shop in India and many other countries in Asia Pacific. I don't know so much about the other regions. With a QR code, there's a QR code within their mobile phone, and you just scan it and make a payment, and it's goes in a few seconds. It doesn't. You don't need a card even really in those markets. There are other means of doing it. Just hopefully that answers her question. Yeah,
Yeah,
and also the government's like it's also important to have your government's backing on that, right? Your government needs to support and ensure that technology business and startups within these businesses, the environment is conducive for companies to set up and run these kind of businesses that actually drive innovation, basically.
yeah, that's very true. So you mentioned some trends that I feel like are very global trends, but there are also some local trends, like Bleak in Poland, like Ideal in Netherlands. I wonder, or I don't know if QR code payment in India is could be also associated as such a local trend, or already global. But I just wonder, do you see any of those local trends being having a potential to go international and disrupt the payment industry?
It's a very interesting question and also a hard one, right? I mean, I love Poland for that reason. Poland has, if my memory serves right, it has about 20 25 alternative payment methods. You go to any website and you have so many options to make your payment, but you also have debit cards and credit cards to make payment, right? That's a great example for innovation and alternatives to how customers could pay. I think when you think about alternative payments, the first thing that would come to my mind, or for that matter, anyone's mind, is PayPal, right?
Mhm.
It has about 50% of the world's market share, and that's big. Followed by some of the other global players like Amazon Pay and maybe Apple Pay, etc. We already have lots of global players within this industry, and while I think companies like Blick have tried to get into new markets like UAE in the past, I think while there is also room for offering alternatives, I don't really see how I don't see how some of these local players can disrupt an industry that is already so concentrated and kind of sophisticated. I can also, the reason why I say that is the card schemes together came out with an alternative to to PayPal, or should I say, as part of a secure remote commerce offering, they came up with their own, as part of EMV came up with its own standards of providing alternative payment option for customers like PayPal and like Amazon Pay. In my view, it didn't take off really well, and there must be a reason why that happened. We need to dig a bit deeper into that to understand.
I wonder what you say, what you think about like one particular trend, buy now, pay later. Do you think this one has a chance of being sustainable one in the long term, or is it just temporary trend?
I think buy now, pay later is here. It's going to exist. Yes, buy now, pay later solution has been in the press for wrong reasons recently. But I think it is important that they are solving an important problem statement for users of allowing users who, in my view, are not a standard fit for credit card companies, an alternative to split their purchase across 3 months or 6 months or 12 months, right? That way, merchants or retailers get their money quickly. They're able to sell more potentially to users who otherwise would not be buying their product. On the other side, on the person who's making the purchase, uh, it allows them the flexibility to split their costs into different through different periods of time. While there is no standard regulations. There is no credit check at the moment for BNPL, as far as I understand. I stand corrected if that has changed more recently because things are changing every day. Uh, I think it is still here to stay. I still think the product offering itself can be a bit more better, keeping customers. It only does soft check. If it gets regulated, I think it would be a solid alternative to any other alternative payment methods that we see today.
I wonder, I know that you've been managing multiple product teams consisting of engineers, designers, and you've been also working on scaling those teams. I wonder, like, from this experience, do you have any winning factor, like how to set up a product team that is going to be successful?
Sure. There's no sure way to set up a successful product team, right? I mean, it's all things always work on trial and error. You're constantly experimenting, and that's the beauty of being in an agile product development environment. You learn quickly and you make changes and you adapt to changes, right? The challenges when you're building a product from scratch is slightly different to a product that you're taking it to the next level, or let's say you're scaling a product, or taking the product from 10 to 100 in today's that's how people call it today, right? I think whether you're in a startup or whether you're in a scale up, in my view, the biggest challenge is building that big picture context to each and every member of the team, right? Especially when you're building a new product, likely the company is new. You might have one or two people in your team, could be engineers or could be analysts or could be designers, who are from different industries. We've got to empathize with them and understand that, or even if you're from the industry, it's not like you know the formula for taking this product to the next or start building the product. In the beginning, everything is a vacuum, and you're actually starting from vacuum, regardless of how many years of experience you have. Building that big picture context becomes absolutely important, and every member within the team should whether they like it or not, understand what the objectives are, what are you trying to solve in this space, who are your customers are, what problem are you trying to solve for them, and what is it that north star objective or metric that your team is actually accountable for. And some people are interested in being a part of these conversations and some people are not, and we need to make a balancing act and ensure that you're not pushing the person to, or not, you're not just taking sucking away too much of their time, and also giving them the right information so that they have all it takes to stay motivated within the role, right? But when you're in a scale up and when you're in a startup, the speed to market becomes important. So everyone is super focused on time. Time is the essence. And you can make some trade-offs, and you don't have you have to sometimes make a trade-off of not building a fantastic experience, a fantastic product from the get-go, and do some trade-off and build something more like an MVP that you can quickly launch, get feedback, and iterate. So your team has to wear a certain hat. But in a scale-up, well, you've already built a product, you've established a product market fit, you have to scale it up to customers, and you have to enhance it. You have to start looking at debts, you have to start managing your stakeholders. The organization is bigger, there are more people with more interests, and they would expect that you do things on their timeline. So there are a lot of other levers that drive your decision making, and the teams will, on one side, will have to keep time in mind, but also it's about building cleaner solutions, looking at the tech debt, and looking at some of the other tactical bits to ensure that the product that you're building in scale is going well. Communication also becomes the essence and has to be seamless. As product managers, your single most primary duty is to ensure that you over communicate rather than not communicate at all, and keep communicating your thinking, communicate what's going on in the company, bring your team together and make them understand what the larger strategic objectives are for the company, etc., etc. Right? And lastly, oftentimes product teams are working on very ambiguous problem statements. Like I think I said that in the first, you're actually operating out of a vacuum. And being able to break that problem down into executable parts and getting your teams and clearly allocating the tasks to your team and prioritizing things for them and ensuring that all the documentations are top notch for the team uh, matters a lot. And those are some of the things that often don't get so much attention, but I think it's absolutely important in order to counter some of the other challenges that your teams can have. But yeah, ultimately, the big picture, communication, documentation, and empathizing with your team is absolutely important in order to build and scale nice product teams.
Yeah. You also mentioned experimenting, I think, at the beginning of what you've been sharing. And I wonder, fintech comes to my mind as a highly regulated industry. How do you experiment in such environment?
So more broadly speaking, your question is, it's a regulated environment. How can you have to comply to it? Is there any room to experiment? Right? I think there is room to experiment under the regulatory framework that you're on, right? Uh, as a company, it's important that your people within the company, whether they are in regulatory or whether they are in compliance or whether they are in legal, are aware of the regulations and they're aware of the industry that your company is operating in. Once you have that established, any product feature experimentation that you're doing, or whether it's a new product idea that you're ideating with a limited set of customers for review or feedback, you've got to ensure that you're, as a product team, you're speaking to your experts within the company who understand the regulatory and legal framework that the businesses are operating in, to give you a go ahead before you go ahead and do something. Right? That's the first step. For example, you can't go and launch a credit card program if you don't have the right licensing in place, or you can't even experiment it. You can potentially experiment if your existing user are interested in a product like credit card. If you're a company that doesn't offer credit card and you offer only debit card, but obviously you can't go ahead and start building a product, or maybe you can even go start building a product, but you can't really launch anything without the right license and license ship by the card schemes, and you, once you have the right capital in place to lend to your customers and things like that. Yeah, so there is some leeway in terms of, on in product teams, you're, when you're experimenting, you're not experimenting a whole solution, right? If you build out an entire product and then you go to the experiment phase, then you're likely going to fail, right? Let's get that clear. So there is still room for experimenting in other ways to see if there is a demand amongst your user base and potential new user base, and do some prototyping and A/B testing to get initial feedback. But that should be enough, really, to get a sense of what the market wants, and to start sizing it. And you can, if you have the means to do it, go ahead and build the product. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Venkat, for all the answers. Actually, we're getting to the last question. So time flies. And the last question is something that we're asking all our guests. And here it comes. So it's about a magic wand. And if you could spell a cast that allowed you to provide education on a specific topic to all 12-year-olds in the world, what would it be? What would you want them to all to learn?
12-year-old.
Yeah,
Just curious, why 12-year-old?
why not?
Interesting. I think if I was to introduce some levels of education that is probably not covered as part of the current education system, I would probably introduce business foundations and business psychology to 12-year-olds, right? It's a loaded topic. I get it. Of course, I wouldn't mandate it, but it would just provide, I would provide it as an option, because 12 years of today are going to be faced with lots of business challenges as they step into their professional life, whether it is entrepreneurship or working for a company, or whatever, or anything in between, right? And I think understanding business foundations and business psychology and principles at a very young age could potentially prepare them for the future that lies ahead of them. Yeah, so some education around business would be something that I would introduce to a 12-year-old.
Actually, I would be like signing up for that if I were 12 years old.
I wish I knew at least
Right.
a little bit, exactly, right? You wouldn't be wasting so much time off your professional career trying to figure things out by mistake, right?
Exactly. But anyhow, I think we're in a good place. So thank you so much, Venkat, for the talk. It was great to spend this 50 minutes with you, getting into the future of digital payments and many, many more topics. Thanks so much.
Paula, thanks once again, and happy Valentine's Day to you and your viewers. And I hope this was useful. Thank you.
For me, for sure. I hope for our viewers as well. And for anybody who's listening to us, if you have any more questions, please post them. We will be sharing with Venkat afterwards, or reach out to Venkat directly. And I hope to see you on the next episode of Disruption Talks. And have a great rest of the day.
Bye.
Bye.